Show. It's the Barbara Show. Coming your way with a smile today. Down the humorous path with a lark and a laugh. It's the Barbara Show. The Barbara Show. Welcome to Humorous Adventures with Barbara.
Well, welcome again to the Humorous Adventures with Barbara. Today, I will admit, yeah, I used to smoke, but you know why? I started smoking just to be cool. And, it wasn't easy to learn how to inhale. It really wasn't. And how this all started was when I talked about me and my 4 other goody two-shoes friends wanting to be with the cool guys, we practiced how to smoke. And one day we were we were practicing in my house. And my parents had come home a little earlier than expected. And I thought to myself, how am I going to get the smell of cigarettes out of the bathroom? So my friends ran in my room and quickly, oranges. I grabbed an orange and I peeled it and I started rubbing orange peels on the bathroom walls. I thought, this is perfect. So I go in my room, my parents come home, and then there's a little knock on the door. Dun, dun, dun. I said, yes. My mother opens the door and she said, Barbara, I just have one question for you. And I said, yes. And she said, why were you eating oranges in the bathroom? Well, I didn't really have a good answer for that. And once again, when I try to be deceptive, it never works. But I was younger then, and I wasn't totally clued in on that. Believe me, I don't even try anymore. The other thing is, my mother really had a very good, keen smell. And they told me never to have the boys in the house when they weren't home. And of course, well, it happened. What can I say? And again, they came home earlier than expected. So when my parents were coming up the back steps, the boys ran out the front steps. And then I ran into my room with my friends and we're thinking, all right, we're good. And then there was another knock on the door. I said, yes. My mother said, I just have a question. Yes? Why do I smell leather in the living room? Okay, whatever. Now, smoking, again, I have a couple of other smoking stories. I was visiting my cousin in New York City, and they had ordered food from a restaurant across the street from them. So I offered to go across the street and pick it up, because I could go outside and have a cigarette. So I come out of her apartment building and I light up a cigarette. And all of a sudden, these guys circled me. And it was very intimidating. And they said, we want cigarettes. So I was a little apprehensive opening up my purse to give them cigarettes, thinking maybe they're just going to run away with my purse. But I was told, and it's worked for me so far, even though I'm frightened, just pretend I'm not. And even though my knees were buckling and I'm shivering inside, my face said, maybe you want to mess with somebody else. So as I gave them cigarettes, they parted their way and let me cross the street to the restaurant. However, I was so frightened that I called my cousin and I said, send your husband over here because I am not walking across the street again by myself. Now, another time, I was traveling to Chicago. I was just hired at this new job. I happened to know the boss really well from a previous job and some of the employees, but not all the employees. They told me to fly into Chicago and then just take the train to Monroe, I think it was, like downtown Chicago. I don't really remember the stop exactly, but let's just call it Monroe. I get in the train and I'm really paying attention to when they say Monroe. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I would hear the conductor say very clearly, "We are now coming to," and I don't know. So I'm trying to look outside and see what the sign says on the stop. And then we would continue. "We are now coming to," I would hear very clearly, "We are now coming to," but I wouldn't hear the stop. After a little while of this, the people around me in the train could see that I was very panicked. I could see I'm going through from the red line to the blue line. So they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going downtown to Monroe." They said, "Okay, we'll tell you when you get there." So they took pity on me, thankfully, and I got to the location okay. Now I'm on the 30th floor. It's wintertime, 30th floor of a high rise. I'm meeting these new employees for the first time, and then there's a break. So my boss said to me, because he smoked, he said, "You know, you could smoke in my office, it's okay." But I didn't want to look like, oh, I know the new boss and he's letting me smoke in his office. So I said, "No, that's okay." So during the break, I was ready to go out, down the elevator, outside to have a cigarette, when the idea occurred to me, why do that? Look, there's a fire escape there. So I open the door to the fire escape and I go inside, and I don't know, I think you've heard this click before, but the minute that thick door shut, that click, I knew I wasn't getting back in that way. And I started yelling, "Hey, help, help, open the door." And everybody was on break, and I could hear them talking, but they couldn't hear me. The door was so thick with the sound, so I had to keep screaming, "Let me out, I'm in here, let me out." Finally, I could hear them talking. "Do you hear something?" What they told me later, they heard like a little mouse, "Let me out, let me out." Finally, somebody opened the door and I came out. I was so embarrassed. Here I'm meeting a lot of new employees for the first time, and they meet the lunatic. Because really, if I didn't do that, I would have had to walk down 30 flights of steps, go outside in the wintertime, and then come back in. Okay, talk about a first impression. Smoking again, it really got to be a little problem, when traveling, because it used to be that once you got through security, if there was a bar in the airport, you could smoke. But then they stopped that, especially in California. I believe, the more you go east, the more you can smoke. The more you go west, no. So it got to be such a hassle that was another reason. Once I was through security, I wasn't going back out. So that was one reason that stopped me from wanting to smoke. Another reason was I decided to play tennis right about that time. And every time we would take a break, I would sit down and smoke. And, my friends inevitably would run circles around me because they did it. So I realized that I knew smoking was bad after a while. Being cool was out of the picture. Now I was addicted. And being my own police cop, I would say, "Oh, Barbara, smoking's bad, don't do it." And then I would just get a pack and start smoking again. So it wasn't until there was a real positive reason for me to win at tennis that I said, "No, I'm not smoking anymore." So thank goodness, okay, I don't smoke anymore. This might not have anything to do with smoking, but once you start smoking, you associate drinking. If you have a cup of coffee, you want to have a cigarette. If you have a glass of wine, you want to have a cigarette. So let's talk about wine a little bit. I decided, really, I'm only going to drink red wine from now on. Why? Because Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes said that red wine is good for your heart. So I tell people I only drink wine for medicinal purposes only. Now, one time, my best friend was the event manager for our company, And she would pick a company to build a booth for these big computer shows, which gave a lot of money to the guys building this booth. So in order to show their appreciation to our company, especially my friend, he knew that we like to drink red wine. And he said, you know what? I'm going to buy the best bottle of wine Caesar's Palace has to offer for you girls. Let's go tonight to Caesar's Palace. So my friend and I got to Caesar's Palace a little earlier, and we got the house red wine, and we're enjoying ourselves talking. When he comes, he said, is that house wine? And we said, yeah. He goes, no, I promise. The best bottle of wine Caesar's Palace has to offer. So I said to him, you know, we really appreciate that gesture, but we only know the difference between rot gut and medium. If you buy a real expensive wine for us, what do I know? And he said, what do I know? And I go, yeah, what do I know? And he goes, what do I know? And I'm like, oh no, what do I know? So basically, I told my company this story, and they, at the end of the year, got me this plaque, and it spelled both ways. What do I know? And what do I know? I would fly a lot, and sometimes I could upgrade myself for free to first class. And again, people that are wine connoisseurs, they know their wines, they smell the body, they put it around in their mouth for a while. Now me, if it's a hot summer day, what I do is I ask for a big glass of ice, and then I proceed to pour, I don't care how expensive the wine is, into the ice. And I like it. And I would see these looks of disdain on some people's faces. And it would just make me laugh. I mean, you know, I'm going to have it my way, and that's the way I like it. Some people actually said to me, wow, that's a pretty good idea. But, you know, they didn't want to be seen as doing something like that, you know, in front of people. Okay, I just want to end with this just because it really happened. And people say to me, once again, why do all these funny things happen to you? Well, let me tell you that today, because my water heater broke and I'm waiting for a plumber to come, today I had to take an ice cold shower. Whoa! It was not fun, let me tell you. I was screaming, but I made it here. And like I would always say, it might not be funny at the time, but it's funny now. Well, thanks again for joining me in the Humorous Adventures with Barbara.
It's the Barbara Show. It's the Barbara Show. Coming your way with a smile today. Down the humorous path with a lark and a laugh. It's the Barbara Show. The